Shut up and sit down.
This is the way. Hello, my friends. I am not Din Djarin the Mandalorian. I am Simon, your cosplay nerd, and I am here today to give you part 2 of the series where I tell you how I made this Mandalorian cosplay armor based on the Disney Plus show, The Mandalorian. In this second part, I'm going to talk to you about weathering and detailing on the painting. I'm going to tell you how I added a visor to the helmet, and I'm going to talk to you about all of the additional parts and knickknacks and accessories that I fabricated through this build. I noticed in the Mandalorian TV show that the armor looks very, very different week to week. There are some episodes where it looks super shiny and brand new, other episodes where he's in the desert and it looks very sandy and almost rusty, and yet more episodes where he's in space and it looks almost greasy. It's got kind of a black, shiny, oily sheen to it. I decided for personal preference and for the type of photo shoots I was probably going to be doing that I would go with a desert look. So I decided to dry brush my armor in like a rust-colored browny paint to give it that effect. Now, there are hundreds of YouTube videos telling you how to dry brush, so I won't teach you that, but suffice to say, you use a dry brush, you probably guessed that part, with a very small amount of paint, and you gradually work your way from the edges of whatever you're painting outwards. And what that results in is a darker line of paint around the edges that gets fainter and fainter as it works outwards, giving it that weathered effect. I went around every single armor piece, and as you can see, every piece has this type of rusty, sandy, weathered effect on it. It took quite a while, but I'm pretty happy with it. I may, when I'm wearing this at Comic-Cons, go back and darken it, maybe put some oily black in it as well. We'll see how I feel at the time. Now for the visor, I followed the advice of the amazing Mandalorian Mercs, a cosplay company of Mandalorians who do awesome work for charity. Now they recommend taking a visor that's made of darkened welding type material and cutting it down to size. They typically attach their visors using metal screws. I pretty much followed their advice to the letter apart from one thing. Instead of metal screws, I used small 3D printed plugs that I glued to the inside of the helmet to attach the visor so that I wouldn't have to screw through the plastic and maybe compromise the integrity of the helmet. But apart from that, everything I did was by the book as recommended by the Mandalorian Mercs. Originally, I took some paper and I used that to measure the size of the visor. Then I used some cardboard and I cut that out using the paper template and tried that in the slot. I actually used 2 or 3 attempts at cardboard before I got the shape that I really wanted, and after I was completely comfortable that the cardboard was looking good, I then moved on to cutting the visor material. I was super happy with how the visor turned out. Not only is it impossible to see into the helmet, but I can actually see out of it perfectly well. The visibility is actually really awesome when I'm wearing it. So then I went back to the reference photos from the Mandalorian TV show and realized I had a lot of fabrication to do. He has an endless number of belts and buckles and gizmos and knickknacks all attached to his belt. He also has a right leg armor that I had a choice of 3D printing or fabricating myself, but I was really worried about the fitment of that armor. So for all the small canisters and knickknacks, I found 3D printed models. For the leg armor, I actually chose to make it out of EVA foam. EVA foam, I was literally using just cheap floor tiles that I would cut up with a craft knife. I then glued the EVA foam panels together using barge cement. Now, if you've not come across barge cement before, it is a cosplayer's dream. It takes about 10 minutes to cure after you paint it on the surface that you're gluing using the included brush. After that 10 minutes, you put the two surfaces together and it will bond so strongly that the EVA foam will actually rip before the barge cement will. I painted the leg armor using Rust-Oleum copper hammered paint to give it kind of a metallic 3D type effect, and then I detailed it using silver paint to make it look like it had been scraped or was slightly rusty. As I said, I had 3D printed some canisters and I painted and weathered those in the same type of way I did the rest of the armor. Then I attached those to the leg armor using strips of fake leather fabric that I would double up to give them some thickness and some rigidity. Anytime I was working with the fake leather fabric, I found that barge cement really did not bond to it well at all. So what I did was I bought some E6000 glue. Now E6000 glue is kind of nasty stuff. It's got a horrible smell to it, it's pretty toxic, and it takes about 24 hours to dry. But it's flexible and super strong, so anytime that I was gluing pieces of leather to each other or pieces of plastic to the leather, I would use the E6000 glue. Din Djarin on his belt also has a holder with a number of explosive devices, and again I 3D printed all of those in different pieces. The one effect that I really liked was I was trying to achieve the muted red effect that the discs have on the inside of them in the show, and I actually just used red enamel gloss paint on the discs at first and then airbrushed them with black gloss paint, and it gave it a really nice 3D effect that I liked a lot. It looked a lot like red glass. After that, I really just had to rinse and repeat. I used fake leather to fabricate all of the other belts, I used the 3D printed canisters, and I would sometimes take small boxes that I could find around the house and wrap them in fake leather to make the pouches on the belt as well, so that they weren't just empty pouches flapping around, they had a bit of structure to them as well. So at that point, I had lots of fancy looking armor pieces and belts and things, but nothing to attach them to. So come back and see me in part 3 of this series, where I'll talk to you about how I solved that problem. As always, I am not Din Djarin, I am Simon, your cosplay nerd. Peace out, my friends. This is the way.
Shut up and sit down.